Greetings. We have with us here a 1996 or maybe 97 Geo Metro that has a cranking no start. So I've actually never seen a Geo Metro before. I understand they've got 3 cylinders. Must be a lot of fun at the track. But this one isn't, since it's not going anywhere until we can get the car to start. So let's go ahead and see if we can reproduce the symptoms and cure this cranking no start problem. And cranking no start. And moving the pedal doesn't make a difference. Absolutely nothing there. So the first thing, there's no tachometer on this dashboard. I normally like to look at that and see if there's evidence of cam crank signal. I cannot do that because I just don't have data points for that. So the next thing I'm going to do, try to get as much data as possible. Going to listen for a KOEO prime. That'd be a key on engine off fuel pump prime. I do not hear one. Now again, not all cars have it, but that is leading us in the direction of fuel for our fast tech approach, which we are going to use to find out why this car won't start. All right, let's see here. There we go. And oh my God, look at this cute little engine. Why, it almost looks like a 4-cylinder halfway there. So looking at the system, this has a very basic fuel system. It does not look like we've got a Schrodinger valve on here. Of course, based on our fast tech method and the data I've acquired, fuel is at the top of my triage. So actually, there's no wing nut on the air filter here, so that makes it actually really easy. Actually, there's a fuel hose right here. I'll bet I can... All right, let me just get something so it doesn't spray around if I'm wrong, but pretty sure I should have a prime on that car. And nope, nothing. Just a little dribble of residual fuel, but there's nothing there. So fuel certainly looks to be very suspect here. What I'm going to do is let's try some starter fluid and see if we can get this car to start. Okay. Wow, makes absolutely no difference at all. So let's move down the fast tech method, and let me just do something real quick here. Let me take that fuel hose off again. Get something to... Okay, so we have no fuel, but it didn't start with starter fluids. So that means we're not going to have spark either, which leads me to believe a cam and crank sensor issue is going to be likely here. But let's do a quick test for spark. All right, a lot of you guys have been asking me to use the testlight more in my videos, so it doesn't make any difference to me, quite honestly. I'm happy to use the testlight. So there we go. Let's check for spark. See if we can get that right at the edge there, and I'll get you a camera angle on this where we'll be able to see if there's spark, and we know already there won't be any. Okay, as you saw, there's no fuel and no spark, so clearly we have some good direction now. All right, with no fuel and no spark, you don't need to know too much about auto mechanics to figure that we are strongly suspecting a cam or crank sensor problem with this, since very likely both of those are controlled by, of course, the cam or crank sensor, or maybe both. So I want to go there next. The only problem with that is the crank sensor is on the underneath of the car by the crankshaft, of course, and I really don't want to get under the car. So one thing I want to just try to do, as long as I'm at the top of the car and feeling comfortable, I just want to see if I can put 12 volts and get the fuel pump to run. So let me just do that and just roll out. It'll help to further indicate if we've got cam and crank sensor as our problem, which I'm very confident we do. All right, just some basics here. We are going to the relay. It says fuel pump right here. So here's our fuel pump relay. And let's take a look. And we have a map here, which is very helpful so that I can go ahead and jump the load side. The only problem is there's no numbers on the terminals here. I'm not totally confident the map is lining up because it's not exactly lining up with the terminals. And I definitely do not want to jump the control side. So let me look on the fuse box itself. All right, and there's writing on it, but I don't see, and granted my eyes are not what they used to be. Let me get a light, but it doesn't look like there's indication on there either. Yeah, and it does not look like there is. Here's our port here. So that is a problem now because I'd have to get a fuse diagram. I really don't want to look up a wiring diagram right now. So the other thing, it might be quicker if I just go under the car and do a crank sensor bypass, see if we can get spark and fuel. But as long as I'm up here and as long as I've got this here, let's just what I want to do is let's see if we can use the relay itself to map the relay port. All right, so let's just do some basics here. And what I'm going to do is look for my control and load sides. So this should be very quick. Need to make contact here. We got nothing, so my continuity, of course, should be over here. And we can see it is. Okay, perfect. So now I've got my load and control sides mapped out. I just want to double check to be absolutely sure. Let's see here. Yep, absolutely. All right, great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump the load side. Before I do that, all right, and before I jump this, I just want to do one other test because that was a little kind of a jukey way of doing this. But and why? Oh, you know what? I don't think I have the key in the car. Hold on. All right, no, key is on, and I have 1 volt. So that significantly changes everything. Let me just verify that. All right, well, I guarantee you none of you guys saw that coming, did you? But let's do our tests real quick here. We need our 12 volts there. We've got it. Of course, none here. Look at that. It doesn't even light the light. Wow. Okay, so that is not going to be a crank sensor issue. This is going to be an open. It doesn't explain the no spark, though. Well, except if there's a fuse, though. So let me check the fuses real quick. All right, so actually I got my test light right here, so we can just go through and, oh, there we go right there. Blown fuse right there. Which fuse is that? It says FI. I'll bet that stands for fuel injection. Let's pull that fuse and check that. All right, so we have a blown fuel injection fuse. That would explain everything, and sure enough, if we check it out, the fuse is blown. So let's see if we can find a 15 amp fuse, and that car should start then, unless we've got a problem where the fuse keeps blowing. So, because I wouldn't expect the fuse just to blow for no reason. So let me get this relay back in and check my fuse collection. All right, got the relay in, 15 amp fuse. Well, it didn't blow when I put it in. We've got the ignition on. I can hear the fuel pump run too. Yeah, fuel pump actually sounds pretty decent. So what we're going to do is try to start this car and let's see if the fuse holds. All right, kind of sounds like a ricer a little bit, doesn't it? All right, let's see if our fuse is intact, and it still is. So what I'll do is I'll just run this car for a little while, make sure that fuse stays intact, and Hopefully it's just real simple, but the only problem is obviously we're suspecting a cause for that blown fuse. So I just want to let this run and see if that fuse blows after a while. All right, well, I have tried running this engine for a while and I cannot seem to get the fuse to blow. I was jiggling some wires around, seeing if there's some obvious ground fault. Can't really get that fuse to blow right now. So as far as the future here, obviously I'm not very satisfied sending this car back after a blown fuse like that. Very likely it would blow during a drive home or something, so I don't want to get the customer stuck and I don't really want to test drive it. So what I'm going to do is on my own, I'm going to run through some tests, and I actually will talk about those and go into a lot more detail on the procedures that I used and explain them in more detail over on my other channel, Schrodinger's Box Quantum Mechanics. So you're free to check that channel out. It's $4.49 a month, and also you get a 2-week free trial. But what I'm going to do is explain in detail every single step I did, so if you didn't follow or understand something, you would in that video. Plus, if I do get this fuse to blow, we will also on that channel cover finding the fault. So we'll get to there. But before I leave you guys with what is basically a review of some very basic diagnostics on a no start, I do want to address some of the asshats in their armchairs that are going to say, oh, you should have checked the fuses in the first place. That's what I always say. Well, the thing is that there's nothing wrong with checking the fuses in the first place, but saying that we should have checked something because we now know that's what it turned out to be is basically showing stupidity. There's no more reason to think this would have been a fuse problem than a fuel pump problem, a cam crank sensor problem. It was actually working through a logical process that I actually knew there had to be an open, including possibly the fuse. But to just check fuses is the first step and say, see, if you'd have checked the fuses first, you would have saved yourself a lot of time. Well, if this thing turned out to have been a bad fuel pump, and maybe if I checked the fuel pump first, it would have saved a lot of time. And as a matter of fact, if you've watched any of my 200 videos with I don't know how many no starts I've had, this is the first one that I've had where it's been a fused problem. So statistically, checking the fuses first is usually a bad move. But scientifically, it's not any better or any worse than anything else. I just seem to have a hard time getting people to understand that. That and the visual inspections. I'm certainly not going to do a visual inspection unless I know what I'm looking for, and we'll do that in the next video. So just wanted to wind out with that little tidbit of thought. Anyway, we'll see you guys next time, and the rest of you guys, I'll see you over on the other channel. Take care.